three filmmakers with nothing in common. They thought they had it all figured out. They don't just follow the movies, they make them. Alexander Pavlak, Mario Silvas, and Jamal Alexander are the makers on film.
You alive?
Oh, okay. There you are.
Yeah.
Barely.
Oh, barely.
Yeah.
You sick?
No. Oh god, there's a weird echo going on.
Me or you?
Oh wait, maybe it's done. It's on my end. It's every time I talk, I hear my voice seconds later.
Weird.
It is weird.
Are you doing something weird to it?
No.
Oh.
I mean, define weird.
You're not, like, bad touching yourself, are you?
Would that cause an echo?
I don't know. I've never hung out with you that long.
I don't think that would.
I mean, I'm gonna assume no, but not gonna go ahead and throw that off the list just yet. Oh, can stretch.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up with you?
I'm not sure. I'm actually just finishing something up. Give me like 10 minutes. I'll be on the other line.
Okay, no problem.
Cool.
Yeah, Mario and I would just vamp while you take care of your thing.
Yeah. I'm in.
All right.
Okay,
Bye. Well, there you go. It'll take him 10 minutes to finish touching himself. And it's working for a place that we will just refer to as Bullseyes, if you know what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
It's in their warehouse.
Oh, nice.
You would think it's nice, except they only have 2 shifts, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. or 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
Jesus.
They're 3-day 12-hour shifts. So I work Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So I haven't even posted this week's show yet.
Holy shit, dude. Decent pay?
Yeah, I'm making about $4.25 a week, I think, out of 3 days of work.
That's not terrible.
Except, here's the thing. They have all these rules in place. So you can't sit down on the job or you get fired. You can't lean while you're on the job or you get fired. You can't use the bathroom 15 minutes prior to your break or you get fired. Or you can't use the bathroom 15 minutes to other people's breaks or you get fired.
Other people's breaks?
Yeah, they have they do breaks in 2 shifts so they don't have to shut down the line for half an hour.
Gotcha.
It's a 12-hour day, but they only give us 2 half-hour breaks, which I think that's bullshit.
Yeah, no, that's actually illegal.
Well, it's illegal in states that aren't right-to-work states.
Point. You got it. All right, yeah. I forgot about Arizona.
Yeah, Arizona sucks about that.
Fuck, I forgot about that. Well, I mean, I guess what the real question is it pay better than your last one?
It's actually paying pretty decent, and it's pretty consistent. And especially on Monday, it was really busy because that was Cyber Monday, and we work overnight. So I work 7 p.m. Monday to 7 a.m. Tuesday, which, believe me, whoever came up with the idea of 12-hour shifts 3 days in a row is an asshole.
I can imagine.
That guy needs to have his ass kicked.
Fuck that. I mean, dude, good on you for doing that, because, I mean, you got to do what you got to do to survive, but fuck that.
Yeah, I know, right? So, like the first day you go in, you're fine. The second day you go in, you're a little tired. You're kind of out of it a little bit. The third day, though, man, there's a lot of fatigue and a lot of irritation. And I don't know if anybody ever told them that, but those 2 things together in the workplace, that kind of breeds insurrection.
Are you gonna fucking mutiny?
God knows I want to.
Yeah,
Well, here's the thing. They're like, oh, you can't lean. But my manager comes up to us, or I don't know if he's a manager, he's a team lead, whatever bullshit corporation title they give him. He's a fucking manager, and he comes up,
person in charge. Person
and
in charge.
yeah, the person in charge. And he comes up and he leans on the table and he looks at us and he's like, people get walked out for leaning on tables and such. And then he walks away, and I'm like, was he being serious? Was he being ironic, or is the desire to lean so strong that he can't tell us not to lean on a table without leaning on the fucking table? I'm
I think
like,
he's being an asshole. Is what it was.
yeah, I know, right? And I'm like, what the fuck? Is he trying to be funny and being all like, you can lean, just don't let anybody see you? Or is he being like, was he joking around, or was he like really tired and leaned up and didn't even realize he was doing it? And I was about to say something about it, but he turned around and walked away too quickly.
He may not have even thought about it.
That,
Because there are certain things that everybody does that you don't realize you're doing, but you do it anyway.
yeah.
Like when like the word it's actually words or
Yeah.
That's actually in the English vernacular. Like humans just say that.
Mm-hmm.
Funny enough, in Japan, like Japan, France, everywhere else, it's a different. It's like a different noise that they make. So America is
Yeah.
or depending, but you don't realize you're doing it. You'll be talking, and then basically what it's saying is that your mouth is working faster than your brain is working faster than your mouth.
No, I think you had it right the first time.
Yeah, you're right. I had it right the first time.
Yeah. Because
So
you have to like stop and wait for the information to catch up.
yeah, exactly. That's what it is. So while you're doing that, you naturally just go catch up and then do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can only imagine it's the same thing that you do when you lean. You're tired. Your body is tired of standing up, so you need to just rest it against something.
Right.
So I don't think he was doing it to be a dick. I think he was doing it, and it just so happened to seem like he was being a dick at the same time.
Yeah. Well, the kind of the way he said it makes me question, if he was doing it consciously or subconsciously. So you never know.
Regardless, it's so there's a company here in California called Winco, WINCO. I love them. I love the way they run their business. It's a company-owned grocery store.
Okay.
So every single employee that works there has stock.
So it's like a co-op or something.
Essentially, but it's an actual like full function. It's fucking Vaughn's essentially, or Fry's.
Right.
But they have, it's a grocery store. That's the only thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like I think IGA does the same thing where they sell basically a franchise name, and you have the backing power of someone of like a buyer, but yet you're a small independent store.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing is, they're actually a franchise, which is funny. So there are Wincos in Ventura, where I live.
Mm-hmm.
There's one opening up in LA. It's not a good location, but LA.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple up north, and there's another. I forget what the other one is, but they're starting to get in. They're starting to gain in popularity, and that's because they're owned by the employees.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody who works there, they're not the bottom rung of society. And I don't mean to offset anybody that works at Walmart or Fry's or Vaughn's or Ralph's or anything, but these people, when you ask them for something, they gladly help you out. There's none of this like hemming and hawing and just kind of shoving you off into a corner. They genuinely help you out. It's because they have a lot of stake into this company, and because of that, they're union based.
Right.
So they get, I think it's $2 above minimum wage, and minimum wage in California is 10 right now.
Right.
It's 9 right now. I'm sorry. It's going to be 10 in January. So they're getting paid minimum $11 to $12.
Right.
And that's just a dude that pushes the carts.
Mm-hmm.
Those are pretty decent wages. You work. You work a full 40 hours if you go full time, or part-time or whatever you're going to work. But I mean, you can make a decent living wage at that company alone.
Yeah, especially in like LA, which is, very expensive to begin with.
Tell me about it.
That, it's nice that they're throwing their employees a couple extra bucks.
Yeah. And it just helps everyone out. But I was actually reading Walmart's is under the thumb right now because a lot of people aren't happy with the way that they're doing their business.
That is the topic for a whole nother show. That's a topic for a whole show right there.
Fucking right. I think Jamal's on, by the way.
Yes, he is.
I've been watching porn.
I'll take that as a yes.
I've been watching porn.
Well, okay, first off, why do you sound like you're 90? You sound like George Burns or something. And you should just be replacing porn with "Get Off My Lawn."
Yeah, seriously.
And then later porn now. Actually, I've been reading up on some...
On porn?
Well...
Yeah, he's like the hipster of porns, Nothing really catches the appeal of analog porn anymore, It's just nice to feel something in your hand.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure this gets somebody off somewhere. I've just been reading about all these like strange anime they have, because I now have Hulu and I have tons and tons of anime.
Are you watching tentacle porn?
No, but it's pretty damn close.
There was a pause there.
Well, like I said, it's pretty damn close. It's called Parasite.
I don't think I even want to know.
I've never heard of that one.
No, well, basically these aliens, I guess, land on Earth and they survive by, inhabiting people's bodies and then turning them into monsters, like their heads turn into giant jaws or something. And this guy manages to stick the one that he has stop it from taking over him and sticks it in his hand. But now his hand's a living thing with its own mind and has an eyeball on its index finger and then a claw for a thumb. And it just kills things brutally. I'm sure it gets somebody off somewhere.
Oh, dude, we're not judging you, just not during the show, okay?
Like I said, I have tons and tons of anime now, so I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to watch.
Gearing up for Star Wars. And
Woo!
By the way, here in town, I don't know if they've done it anywhere else, but here in Tucson, they opened up a new day for Star Wars viewing, so you can actually see Star Wars on the 17th instead of the 18th like everyone else. So if you don't have tickets, now is the time to get them because they're not going to last.
Oh, so actually, I was reading up on that because they did the same thing in Arizona or in California. So basically, what it is movie companies have the right to show movies after 7 p.m. the day previous to the actual release day.
Well, that's usually where you get your midnight showing.
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of companies are realizing we can't have a lot of we're losing a lot of money if we get it at 7 p.m. and then wait.
Mm-hmm.
So what a lot of movie theaters are doing here in California is they're saying, okay, we will start showing blockbusters, Star Wars. The first showing will be at 8 p.m. because the whole I'm not too sure if anybody who's worked in the movie theaters, but nowadays, because everything is digital, what it is, you get the movie, or the company sends it to you, and then supposedly, the day before the premiere is going to open, they send you a digital key.
Yeah, so they stream it just kind of like Netflix.
No. They actually send hard drives, but there is software built into the hard drives that will actually not allow you to read the file within a certain time, and you have to have a key in order to get into it.
Nice. I did not know that.
Yeah, they just started doing that a couple of years ago. And so companies now are allowing movie theaters are showing it now, movies, but 7 p.m. the day previous, and those are like the early screenings. So they're making shitloads more money.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh
a
yeah.
whole bunch of people are coming in. They're buying the popcorns. They're buying the drinks. They're buying everything.
Oh yeah. With Star Wars, this is going to be ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be mental. I mean, it's so much to the point that they're banning face masks, lightsabers, and actually, I think they're banning costumes in general.
Really?
I
Yeah.
think that's more to do with just how bad the security's been the last few years at the theaters, like with the shootings and stuff.
This is true. This is true. I
That
can kind of
that could be a point as well.
I can kind of understand banning like lightsabers and props and stuff like that, but costumes.
I would ban the masks and let them keep the props, because the props you can identify. The masks, that I'm more worried about people wearing masks coming in.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? The lightsabers that Mario and I have, the quote unquote indestructible ones, which I've actually been finding out they're not as indestructible as they say.
No, they're not indestructible. They're just hard to break.
Yeah, those can actually be used as a pretty severe weapon. I mean, you wouldn't be able to kill somebody with it, but my God, you could beat somebody about the head and neck with that for quite a long time.
You,
Well, that's kind
you
of
can
like
do some damage with ours.
that's more or less just Black Friday level violence. I mean, we're talking about guys going in there with guns and stuff, and I'm more concerned about the people that are making an effort to conceal their identities than I am the people who are carrying around light up swords.
Glow sticks.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's actually really funny because in Arizona, it's an open carry law out there.
Mm.
So I don't really see that happening all too often.
People carrying around lightsabers?
No, no, like I couldn't see something drastic happening, like the in Colorado where there was that Planned Parenthood shooting.
Yeah.
That happened last week. So I mean, I don't really see. Oh God, my nuts! I don't see things too crazily happening in Arizona. I have a bag of almonds. Shut up, Alex. I knew you were going to say something about it.
He's gonna say something about you not seeing your nuts. That's what I'm predicting here.
Well, I was giving him a chance to rephrase that because I assumed that if something was actually happening to your testicles, you would not have said the phrase "oh my nuts" and then continued on with your story. There would have been a more of just a shriek of pain. So I was going to give you the opportunity to rephrase that.
I feel so blessed you were going to give me that opportunity.
And then I was going to make fun of you.
Well, you're going to make fun of me regardless.
Yes, but I was going to give you the opportunity to rephrase it.
Fair enough. But I mean, I don't see something too crazy happening in Arizona because there is that open carry law. Out here in California, where it's a little bit harder to get a gun, but you can do it.
Well, it's easy to get a gun here, and yes, you can carry, but there are a lot of establishments that have signs up that prohibit you carrying, especially like bars and places like that. So
Well, yeah.
I can see the theater being the same way.
There's no signs in any theater in Arizona that I remember that say you cannot have a concealed weapon.
Have you been here since the whole Batman Dark Knight Rises fiasco?
Maybe?
Because I haven't gone to a lot of theaters since I went to go see Dark Knight Rises, but there may be. I haven't really noticed them, but I haven't really looked either because I don't carry a weapon.
I went to see Ant-Man the week after the guy went into what was it, Trainwreck? He went to see the Amy Schumer movie and shot people up in that theater. I went to see Ant-Man like the weekend of that, and I'm not gonna lie to you, sitting in there, it changed me. I usually love going to the theater. Sitting in that theater that day, it was not a completely easy experience.
And see, that's the bullshit part of it. That's what pisses me off about anything else, about what's happening right now in our society, is that we are no longer fucking comfortable doing anything.
You know what?
We can't go outside of our own house without feeling threatened. We can't go to the store without like, oh, what is someone going to come in and rob this? No, this is fucking bullshit. I hate it.
Yes.
There was some lady yesterday, the day before. She is actually on 3 years probation and 6 months of house arrest, or not house arrest. She has an ankle bracelet, essentially.
Yeah.
Because she let her kid get 120 feet away from her. CPS was called on her. CPS took her kid away and said, you cannot have your child more than 120 feet away from you. There were days when I went several miles away from my family. This is bullcrap. I hate the way that society is going nowadays.
I don't even know what 120 feet looks like, to be honest.
That's like so at the labs, if you stand in front of the labs, go all the way to the front door, that's about 150 feet.
That's actually a significant amount of space there.
No, it is.
Yeah.
But when was the last time you weren't allowed to get that far away from your mom when you were growing up?
My mom would periodically lose me in the department store, mostly because, you know, she wasn't paying attention looking through clothes, and then I would go and hide underneath the racks and freak her the fuck out.
Yeah.
Nobody ever took me away from her for that.
Exactly. But nowadays, you cannot get more than 100 feet away from your mom without, the parent, your neighbor calling you and freaking out. Oh, hold on. Let me close my window. I'm screaming.
But God forbid you put a leash on your kid to make sure that you know where they're at all times.
Yeah, and then people call you a bad parent for doing that.
Yeah, which I kind of like that, because there is so much throughout the course of the day for me personally that's either shiny or pretty and shiny that I'm going to go look at, or have my attention taken away from whatever it is that I'm doing. I put a leash on my dog because if I don't, I'm going to lose the fucker.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to turn the corner and I'm going to be all like, hey, how you guys doing? Wait, didn't I have a dog?
Exactly.
So I am actually a pretty strong proponent for kids on leashes. If that helps you not get your kid kidnapped, then by all means, fucking put your kid on the leash.
But at the same time, should we have to be that way in society right now, where we're not allowed, where we have to have our kid on a leash because one of your neighbors is going to call the cops on you, and subsequently CPS, because your kid is outside playing?
Well, it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Because
no, it's not.
You have your kids on a leash and people make fun of you for it, or you don't have your kids on a leash and your kid gets kidnapped or taken away by CPS. And how did that rule come about anyway? Who said that this has to be the way that it is? I mean, like, how is 120 feet the arbitrary number that they came up with? Because I tell you, if Mario was at the front of the building and I was at the film labs and a van rolled up and tried to kidnap Mario, I wouldn't have been able to fucking get there in time to save your ass.
No, exactly.
Kidnapped.
But also at the same time, why is it so dangerous now that we have to do this? What happened within our society that we have to do this, where we have to have these rules, we have to leash our child? I hate saying it like that. But what happened? What happened to the days when the mom, I vividly remember growing up when my dad would open the front door, I would walk out and he would just close it on me.
That was a simpler time. I mean, for me, it was like the 70s and early part of the 80s. For you, that was probably the 80s, early part of the 90s?
Yeah.
Yeah, even the 90s was a simpler time than it is now.
Everything is as dangerous as it was back then. The only difference now is that information gets out faster.
Which you'd think would be a better
I've been lost. I've been lost multiple times in the store, in the forest. I've been hit in the face with a goddamn paddle out, paddling with my dad and his friends. Actually, my dad wasn't even there.
And then there's that date you were on last Tuesday.
No. I'm in a committed relationship.
With a paddler.
Hey, we don't discuss my beings. Where does it come down to the point? At what point in time do we start chipping our children? And don't get me wrong, I'm not this kind of guy that's like, oh, I want the government out of my business and everything. But honestly, at what point in time is it going to happen where we're going to ship our children? I mean, we'd ship our animals already.
Yeah.
That I get. Don't get me wrong.
Well,
But at what point in time are we going to ship our children? Are we going to have surveillance systems everywhere? I mean, fuck, our phones. People could be listening to our conversation right now. I already know. I'm on a fucking list.
okay. I put this out on the internet. I don't think anybody actually listens to it. So.
No, I'm saying, I'm on the TSA list.
Right. Oh, I know you are because of 9/11.
Bullshit. God, I was so angry at that.
I know exactly what you're saying, but the chip that we put in our dogs is just an identification thing. You have to have a special scanner, and you have to be like right up on them for people to be all like, "Oh, look, that dog does not belong to you. You know, you stole this dog, so we're going to go ahead and return it to its rightful owner." You actually have to take the dog into like the Humane Society or a veterinary clinic before somebody can read the tag and see what's going on with it. But it's not going to be long before they can implant something into the human body that has some sort of radar signal or radio signal that you can track. I mean, phones keep getting smaller and smaller, and before smartphones came around, uh, the the phones got to be about half the size of what an iPhone is right now.
Yeah.
So, they got pretty small before they started making them bigger to make them supercomputers. So, yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you're saying, but on the other hand, too, look at the movie Ransom with Mel Gibson and what's her face, Rene Russo. Was it Rene Russo in that movie?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
Russo.
yeah. How much money would he have given to be able to go back in time and chip his kid and be able to know where his kid is at all moments of day and night? I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I understand how big of a privacy issue that is, and that I know the government a few years back, the NSA demanded that cell phone companies make cell phones that are easily tappable by the government, so it makes their job easier to listen into our conversations. Under the guise of like you get a warrant, you tap the phone, and yes, that sounds good in theory. You get a warrant to tap somebody's phone, and they don't use a hard line anymore. You can't really tap the phone. So, you need to be able to tap into their cell phones. But there is a line there that we trust people not to cross that I'm sure people cross all the time. I mean, I worked in an elevator industry. If you get stuck in an elevator and you push the button or pick up the phone and say, "Hey, help me, I'm stuck in an elevator," that phone would ring into my phone in a call center, and then I would make sure help gets dispatched to them. So I had access to the information of pretty much every building that had an elevator in it, including the White House, including Fort Bragg, including the Pentagon, including the Playboy Mansion. And I had a phone for a while, and I lost it. I left it in the bathroom of fucking Pima. That had all these phone numbers in it. Phone numbers for the Pentagon, phone numbers for the White House. And that's just that's just a phone number. That's just a guy at a computer looking up the phone numbers of the elevators. It's not even like anybody's specific phone number. It's the phone numbers that ring into the elevator. So whoever has my phone can ring the elevator of the White House and
Yeah.
probably have the FBI on his ass in like a day. But it's like I had that trust and I abused it just because I was bored one day. Hell, I had somebody's bill sent to the White House because I was pissed off at them. And that's
Wait, you were pissed off at the
I
at the
working
White House or the person that you were talking with?
the person I was talking with. I was working for an cable internet service at the time, and the guy was completely irate. I forget which call it was. It was one of two. I think it was the guy whose name was Richard, who people would keep changing his name on the accounts to Dick because he wasn't a very nice person, which would cause him to call in again and yell at somebody because the name Dick came on his bill instead of the name Richard.
That's funny.
And it got escalated to me, and the guy's like yelling at me, like literally yelling at me, telling me how he would beat up kids in school for calling him Dick. So I leave notes on the account that said if he acted more like a Richard, things like this wouldn't happen to him. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like really angry at this guy because this is a phone call that is completely stupid. Okay, he could have had a sense of humor about it and been all like, look, I called in, I was a bit of a jerk. They changed the name on the account to Dick. Can you just go ahead and change it back to Richard? My bad. He could have said that. It would have gone back to Richard. It would have been fine. But I'm like, okay, now I have to do something to this guy because he was a dick to me for like a half an hour for no good reason because I wasn't the one who changed his number or his name. So now I have to do something to him. So we have this function inside the program where if somebody like cancels their service and they want a bill sent to their new house, we can put on a forwarding address. So I just put on the forwarding address of the White House. So 2 weeks go by. Luckily I had the day off. 2 weeks go by, and I come in one day and somebody comes running up to me, like I didn't even get the chance to put my stuff down at my desk, and somebody comes running up to me and they're all like, "You'll never guess who called." And I'm like, "It's a call center. We get like a million calls a day. This is the worst game ever. Just tell me who called." The fucking White House called. And it took me a minute to realize, to put the two things together, because I had totally forgotten about Richard. And my friend's like, the White House called. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, so and so manager, like an actual manager, fielded the call, not like, because when you call into a call center and you ask for a supervisor, you get another CSA agent. They just have a lateral promotion where they take supervisor calls. You don't actually talk to a manager. And if it's a third party call center, if you do talk to a manager, that person's only in charge of making sure that you're doing your job and that, you show up when you're supposed to, not that you're, have the goals of the company in mind. So that manager is completely useless. But they got to a real manager, and she had to profusely apologize to the White House and make sure that because there's a woman in charge of the White House, the house manager or house supervisor, whatever it is, and she called in and she's like, "Look, I know what probably happened here. I just want to make sure of this. We got this bill for cable internet service from Wyoming or whatever," and she's like, "I just want to make sure we don't have to pay this." And the manager's like, "No, you don't have to pay it. Probably the guy, ticked off one of our employees, and as a joke, they just had it sent to the White House." And the woman's like, "Okay, that's what I thought, but we got to check everything out." And she was cool about it. So, God bless her for having a sense of humor. And then people come running up to me that day, and I'm like, "Okay, let's not make it obvious that I was the guy who sent somebody's bill to the White House." 'Cause as cool as that would be to have to tell your next employer why you got fired from your previous job, I don't want to get fired from this job.
Ladies and gentlemen, the people that work for your government.
The people who work for the government were cool and were on top of it. At least they didn't just, shell out $150 for, TV, internet, and phone without, double checking on it. It's the people that you yell at about your email. Those are the dicks who fuck with your shit.
I'm glad I wasn't born when you were. I'm glad I wasn't around and grew up with you, because I'm pretty sure you and I would have gotten into a lot more trouble.
We got into enough trouble just hanging out at the film.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Although I gotta say, we worked well together. It was fun, doing cliche and doing mob rules with you.
Oh no, it was a blast. But there were a couple times when we were at the bars, and I'm like, man, one of us shouldn't be here.
Oh my God, it's hard being that person when you're in charge of all the other people, because all you want to do is fuck with them, and you can't, because then everybody fucks with everybody and nothing gets done. But you just want to be all like, let's fuck with the little people for a while. when you're the director and or producer and or cinematographer of a movie shoot.
Jesus Christ.
Because I would be that kind of director who, if I had a bad day with a celebrity on set, I would take a one of those change of address forms.
Yeah.
And have their mail forwarded to the White House. And I would come into the set the next day, and I'd be fine. I'd be over it. I'm good.
And this is how you end up on lists, Alex. Jesus.
Yeah, this is also true.
Good Lord.
So, anyway.
Did you guys get those 2 things I sent you?
You sent things? Did you send them?
Via Skype.
One is Reddit.
Yeah, and the other one's the Imager link.
Fed ends too big to fail, leading to collapsing banks.
Yeah.
Honestly,
it's an article, so I mean, don't read it now. But I mean, it was good to read.
Yeah, honestly, I forget what president it was, but it was one of the guys in the time of black and white pictures. He was the guy who was all like, "Look, banks, you figure out what you need to do and what's good for the company. Whatever it is, I'll sign off on it." So the government let the banks write the government mandate rules for the banks, which is why we're kind of in the predicament that we are in. And basically at this point, the banks do need to fail. So from those ashes, we can rebuild and make a better system for the people. But that's probably not going to happen.
I don't see it happening anytime soon.
Is this a vacuum tube of people? Oh, no, it's fish. Is this capturing salmon?
It's it's how they transfer, because they'll raise fish, or they'll grow fish.
Yeah, and like fish farms or whatever, ranches.
Yeah, and then they have to transfer them to the actual like ponds and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is how they transfer them.
They transfer them via a suction tube.
Yes. It made me giggle knowing that fish were being fucked with.
You do realize that the catch and release system of fishing is basically giving fish a near-death experience?
You know what's the sad part? You and I have had this conversation already.
Well, I think it's a Jeff Foxworthy bit. So I just steal people's bits and use them as conversation starters.
Oh, so you're the Carlos Mencia of conversation starters.
I like to think of myself as Dane Cook, but funny.
Wow, you got a giggle out of Jamal.
Oh no, that wasn't Jamal.
Oh, what was that?
It's my roommate here.
Oh.
No, I don't know. Is Jamal still on the? Because that would have been a very girly giggle for Jamal.
I thought it was Jamal.
Is Jamal still on the line?
Porn.
Yeah, so.
Maybe we should move on to today's topic.
No, I've been reading like the news, and I just found like the plot for the next bad B Hollywood movie you're gonna see. Okay. For the last 2 months, like people in Japan, like the Coast Guard, have found like 12 ships, all of them just filled with dead bodies.
So it's gonna be like ghost ships and such.
Yep.
Okay. Well,
it's
there is a ghost ship movie starring Carl Urban and that one chick from ER with the curly hair.
I remember that. I remember that movie. It was very dull.
Really?
I didn't like it.
It's generic, but
yeah, generic's the right word.
It had some interesting moments in it. It kept my attention.
The only thing that sticks out was the part where they were eating food and then it turned into like rotten food.
Yeah. Well, that and we lost Mario. That and the wire going through everybody on the ship, which totally physics doesn't work like that. If a wire comes and cuts you in half, which I don't really think it can, but let's say for sake of argument it does, it's not going to leave you intact and then you slide, intact and still alive and functional, and then you just slowly slide apart. The momentum that thing has is going to move you and knock you off your pedestal.
It's going to whip you back like few feet.
Yeah, so like there would be, severed body parts flying all over the place.
Oddly enough, I've seen that gag done worse in movies. Notably, the first Resident Evil. Do you remember the hallway with the lasers?
Yes.
That was terrible.
See,
Absolutely terrible.
the lasers I would give you for that, not the last one where it was the grid, but like if a laser sliced through you completely and severed you in two, you probably wouldn't fall apart immediately. There would probably be like a small residual of you standing there underneath.
There'd be burns, or
Yeah, but
you would start bleeding immediately. In that movie, he kind of stood there for a second, you didn't see anything, and then he just started falling apart.
then there's that trickle of blood, and then he falls apart. Yeah,
Yeah, that.
yeah, but
Again, I've seen it done terribly, and that's the one I'm thinking of.
but there's not that violent motion of the wire going through you, and that's the big thing. Because like you could probably do that with a lightsaber too, and because like how Darth Maul at the end of Phantom Menace, how he was there for a second, and then when he fell backwards, he came apart. That might actually happen. It's hard to say.
Without actually having any finite rules of physics for the lightsaber, no, we cannot say.
Yeah. Apparently, Mario he stopped getting internet service for some reason. Probably didn't pay his bill.
Because he broke!
Or it's a brownout.
Again, I feel like you're just saying that to be racist towards Mario.
Not just. But like I started to say, and then we started talking about me sending people's bills to the White House.
Yeah.
In gearing up for Star Wars, I'm been rewatching the old Star Wars,
Mhm.
and there's this web YouTube channel called CinemaSins, where they do everything wrong with a particular movie, and they're going through the franchise, the Star Wars franchise. And they started with A New Hope, so I think they're going through it in order of appearance versus um, uh, order of time.
Order of appearance versus order of time.
Yeah, like the timeline, whereas Phantom Menace would come first in the timeline,
Okay,
but
okay.
in appearance you see A New Hope first.
Yeah, okay.
So they did A New Hope, and then they did A New Hope with guest star Kevin Smith. So Kevin Smith pops in every once in a while and says something, kind of logical, but kind of also insane. Like the first thing we see with Vader, he comes in and he grabs a guy by the neck and he chokes him. He lifts him up and he chokes him and he interrogates him. And Kevin Smith's like, "You can force choke people from across the room. Why the hell have you all of a sudden become touchy-feely with this one rebel scum?" He's like, "That guy could totally grab your lightsaber and end the movie, the whole franchise, within the first 5 minutes."
Huh. This is true.
Yeah, and you don't think about that because that's the one and only time you ever see it happen. But yeah, this is the one and only time you ever become touchy-feely with somebody, and later on in the movie you see him do it from across the room. And the other one, Kevin Smith was only on on the um, the New Hope one, but he did Empire Strikes Back as well, and he touched on the one thing that I've always complained about. Well, they touch on Solo shooting first, and
Yeah.
apparently Kevin Smith is still angry about that decision, more angry than I am about it. But he says it in a way that sounds like there's a lot of people who are still angry about that. But they get to the point in Empire Strikes Back where the doors open and
Yeah.
Vader's sitting at the table and Han Solo just starts shooting. I don't even think Han Solo even recognizes what he's done. He just pulls from the hip and fires off like 2-3 shots. And then you hear the guy say, "I'm surprised they didn't make Darth Vader shoot first."
Wait, is Kevin Smith mad that that later portrayals had
had had had
had the
Guido
guy you
first.
had who?
Guido.
Greedo?
I will say it the way I want to say it. The way I've always said it.
All right.
You and Lucas cannot make me do a special edition of how it plays out in my mind.
Oh, that's awesome. But wait, he's mad that they made Greedo shoot first?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, they did it two different ways. The first way they did it, they had Greedo shoot first and shoot really wide, and then the second time they did it, they had him shoot simultaneously, which isn't any better. And then he complains that he's like, everybody who's ever seen this movie, who was born prior to the special features knows that Han Solo shot first. And it's not that Han Solo shot first; it's that he was the only one to shoot.
I personally, I think him just shooting on his own, like the only person that pulls a gun, actually gives him more character.
Yeah. But then he goes into, which I've also said, that Greedo shoots so wide. Is that he's a professional bounty hunter. He's 3 feet away from Han Solo. He's already got his gun out. And he shoots and misses him by, 2-3 inches, which is a significant amount.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get a little scanner gun at work, so I can scan, like, UPS codes. And it's nice because it has the red dot in it. It's got, crosshairs on it, so I can see exactly what I'm pointing at. And I'm pretty good with that thing. And I'm not a professional bounty hunter.
Okay, I wasn't going to suggest anything otherwise.
No, but I can come within, an inch of whatever I'm looking at in intent of shooting, from the hip. Not even like looking down a sight or anything. From the hip, I can get within an inch of whatever I'm aiming at. And I am nowhere near professional grade. So Greedo should have put an end to Han Solo's career right there. So the fact that he shot first and missed is what was it? Kevin Smith started saying maybe it's Greedo's first day on the job. And then he says that about a couple of other people. And he's like, is Star Wars just a big tale about, everybody's first day on the job? Because nobody can seem to do their job correctly.
You see, it's the minutia, though, stuff like that. Little changes like that just set the fan base on its rear, and then people butthurt for like, a decade afterwards. How long ago did those special editions come out?
VHS was still popular when the special editions came out.
So 2 decades at least.
Yeah.
And they're still mad about it now.
Yeah.
But I like that you bring up the cinema sins, and I think I've said this to you before. I don't, with all the things they throw in there, all the different concepts and how this movie is just so out there.
Yeah.
Like, put yourself back in 1974?
77.
77?
Yeah.
Put yourself back in 1977. Look at it objectively. I've said this many times before. I think Star Wars was really a terrible B movie that just really caught on and really tickled people's fancies, and that's why it's loved so much. Because if you really think about it, it's not like anything else out there. And if tomorrow I went out and I did a movie where superheroes fight space zombies while riding riding dinosaurs, you would hate it. It would be absolutely ridiculed. It's the same thing as today's what do you call it? What is that movie where there's Nazis in the moon?
Oh, Iron Sky.
Iron Sky, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I believe Star Wars started out as.
Yeah.
But just caught on so well with, or tapped into something that nobody had really tapped into. Because that was like, while there had been sci-fi and stuff before then, none of them had ever really kind of like encapsulated all of the nerdiness that first movie kind of brought all together in one film.
Yeah. Well, no, I think you're absolutely right. Because if you really watch it, the only 2 really good actors in this film are Obi-Wan Kenobi, Alec Guinness, who's Academy Award-winning actor, and Han Solo, Harrison Ford, who is really an up-and-comer and only got his shot because everybody else who they wanted to play that part was unavailable.
Or turned it down completely, like Stallone did.
Yeah.
He walked in there to actually read for the part, and about halfway through, they all realized that I give him credit. He had the balls to say it. He looked at the producer and says, "Okay, I get it. Space cowboys don't look like Italian Americans. You know that. I know that. Thanks for letting me come in."
Yeah.
And then they all kind of just like shook hands and went on from there.
Hold on a second. Yeah, but I mean, I would think it'd be more his voice and his read than it would be his look. But yeah, you're kind of right on that.
I don't know what it is. It's not a completely terrible movie. I will give it its props because at certain points it does not look like a B movie at all. Like some of the set designs, especially the prisons, the prison from that first movie.
Yeah.
I thought that was well done. I
Yeah.
thought some of the interiors of later on in the film, some of the interiors of the Death Star were pretty good.
Well, that's the thing that kind of catapulted it, that made up for whatever flaws you get in your acting and in your script, which there are a lot of flaws in the acting and in the script. Especially Mark Hamill. His reads are very whiny and are
Yeah,
very, very amateuristic. I mean, he's come a long way
yeah.
between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, but still, if if it
I think
wasn't,
the voice acting helped him a lot.
yeah,
Oddly enough, it's the voice acting when he wasn't actually on screen.
yeah. But if it's those set pieces are beautiful. It's the special effects, the models that they used, and it was the costuming. That's what really sold Star Wars for people. And it all basically comes down to merchandising, the toys that you can buy off of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is an endearing quality about it too. There is a an it factor about it where everything just came together correctly. And
Well, that's what I'm trying to say. It's a terrible movie if you look at it from the perspective that you would if this movie had not been successful.
yeah.
Like if you were on the outside looking in with like an objective view
Yeah.
from a critic's point of view, this is a terrible movie. But
Well,
something about it is not terrible. Something about it actually clicks, makes it all come together. Even though they're all terrible parts, they come together to form something that you just I don't know why, but you like it.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you ever watch any of the behind the scenes stuff or read or hear about any of the interviews after the fact,
Yeah.
nobody thought this movie was going to amount to anything.
I have read that stuff about even the crew was like, what the hell are we doing out here in the
Well,
desert?
no, even Lucas himself, the writer, director, producer, the guy whose baby this was, questioned it and was like, "This is shit. I don't understand why anybody gave me money to do this.
Yeah.
We should just pack it up and go home." Even James Earl Jones, who really wasn't anybody at the time, didn't want his name on the project because he didn't want it to taint his career.
I that then what is it? What is that one thing that makes this all come together? Because I can't put my finger on it at the moment.
It's the retelling of an old tale. It's basically, knights and chivalry code in space. It's knights and cowboys brought together in space, and it's the fact that a nobody in the armpit of the galaxy can actually be somebody special. And the way it's presented in such a grandiose manner is really what speaks to people. And the Matrix tries to do this, and they spell it out for you in this one scene where Neo's being yelled at by his boss, telling him that he's just a cog in the machine, that he's nothing special, and that you need to come to work on time and do your job. And that's an in joke to the audience because everybody in the audience knows that this guy who's our hero is going to be something special. But we don't see that in Luke Skywalker right away. This was a kind of a new concept that this farm boy, from the sticks gets to be, a knight in shining armor. And
I My rebuttal is you've heard that story before, many times before, and yeah, it may not have involved outer space, empires and lightsabers,
mhm.
but still, you'd heard it before with other things. Something about this movie in particular, though.
You know what
Something.
it boils down to? I can
Well,
tell you. It's Lord of the Rings in space minus the rings.
that's that's a great summary for this franchise, but I, we were just saying it was a bunch of bad things peppered with a few good things.
Yeah.
But if you usually when you put a bunch of bad things together, they stay. It's just a lump of bad.
It like I said, it speaks to a generation. It spoke to every nerd who felt ostracized because they didn't have a community. It
See,
brought people together. It's not so much the movies, although the movies, in a way are very charming and later on very well done. It's the community that of people that it brought together. You know,
see, see. That's what I think it is. I think the '70s were to nerds what the '60s were to gay people. or African Americans in the civil rights thing. It was that first moment where nerds actually stood up and said, "Yeah, we're nerds and we love this."
Yeah.
And I think off the backbone of that, because again, I don't hate the series, but I see a lot of things that I'm not,
Yeah.
I'm not fond of.
Yeah.
And
Well,
again, I much prefer the more grounded. And I realize that's sort of a misnomer or a moot point when I say grounded with Star Trek.
yeah. Well, yeah, Star Trek was kind of the same thing too. I mean, Star Trek was kind of the opposite. It was really good writing with poor costuming, poor special effects, and poor set design.
There you go.
Yeah, so it was, and these are two things that brought these people together. And unlike African Americans who can identify each other visually, sometimes nerds you don't know who a nerd is.
Yeah,
Or you're just an outcast and you don't
yeah,
know who to talk to. So you see somebody with a Star Wars lunchbox, or you see somebody with a Star Wars tattoo, or you see somebody or you go to a Comic-Con and you see people dressed up in a Star Wars character. Now you finally have a way of identifying people who are your people,
yeah,
and you can go up and you can talk to them about this.
yeah. I think this was the watershed moment for kind of like fanboy, because if you hadn't noticed with what we put out every summer, it's nerds power the cinematic trends now.
Mhm.
I mean, it's at the point where you've converted non-nerds into nerds. Like when professional athletes and jocks are out there and kind of like mimicking their favorite superheroes or quoting them or stuff like that, you've done something.
Yeah.
So and I'll admit, Star Wars has probably kind of led the charge in doing that, making acceptable. Nerdiness is acceptable or mainstream.
It's made it more mainstream,
Yeah,
yes. Because this is something that other people are getting into, and then with the prequels, that they're getting their children into it, and
yeah, yeah.
and unfortunately, the prequels were really written for a very much younger audience than the people who actually went to go see these movies, because it's Star Wars is kind of the Harry Potter of its time in maturity level. It wasn't pandering to its audience. It did stuff. It hoped you understood it, kind of like the parsecs line. You kind of throw that in there, and maybe it was an in joke by Lucas to see if anybody knew what a parsec was. But you throw stuff like that in there, you hope people just accept it for what it is and buy into that, so you can get past that and get to the story. And and there was kind of a maturity about it that the earlier or that the later movies didn't have. That, like Harry Potter, and it's really like Harry Potter 3 and on, that are very dark, that are very, you know, more adult themes about Harry Potter.
They age with the audience.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And like Harry Potter, is starting to look for love, and Ron Weasley and what's her face, they start looking at each other with different eyes, and it's like it was done for a more tweener audience than it was for a kid audience, and I think that's also part of it too, that it didn't insult the audience. It was bad, but it wasn't insulting bad. It was just things that you could forgive. Like some of the special effects weren't all that great, and Lucas felt he had to go back and do it, but you kind of forgave that because of the bigger picture, literally.
You know what I just thought of as you brought up the parsecs thing.
Hmm.
Here's another reason why that doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay.
You've heard all the human characters in this franchise speak perfect English,
Yes.
and I think you've heard them actually use words like pounds, seconds, and actual measurements. And they've used our numbers as well.
I know time was a huge factor in Jedi, because the Death Star was coming into range in a certain amount of time, but I don't remember how they dealt with it. But
But
but go ahead,
still, but
your
still,
thought.
but still, even if you know, parsecs is the word in their language,
Hmm.
it would have still been translated to a word in our language in their speech because they all speak English. So
Well,
it makes no sense to have that word there.
Yeah, but they also there's a couple of phrases that they have in Star Wars that kind of help solidify the universe, and one of which is Bantha fodder, which it obviously means somebody who isn't really equipped to be in battle.
Well, that's different. That's like the names of the races or the planets. Those are they're pronouns for the most part.
Right, but
Whereas everything,
it's something that's not, somewhat it's not entirely translatable into what we know, and it helps create kind of its own language. And maybe it was something that they started in A New Hope that they felt they didn't want to carry through the other ones.
well, that's the thing. Those words, those pronouns aren't translatable,
Hmm.
whereas measurements should be
You're right.
quite easily translatable. So
Yeah.
why parsecs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, also the first time we see somebody lose a body part in the Star Wars franchise, which is in the bar in A New Hope, that Obi-Wan cuts off that walrus-looking guy's arm. I think it's the walrus-looking guy. And on the arm there's some blood. There's some blood on the floor, and there's blood on the guy. He's holding his arm, and he's bleeding. And that's the only time that you ever actually see blood after a lightsaber attack, because
Huh.
it was just something, they didn't fully think about it, or they didn't fully realize it, at the time. But you're using basically a hot plasma gun to remove a body part is going to cauterize the wound right away. But they didn't think about that, and it's something that they didn't carry on throughout the rest of the show, because every time a body part gets cut off now, there's no blood.
Again, this all just feeds into what I said earlier. Without it catching fire with that segment of nerds,
Hmm.
this is a bad B movie.
Yeah.
It's
Well, it is a bad film. There are very much bad parts to it.
well,
I
it's
mean,
when I say a B movie, I mean it's um, God, 1950s B movies or modern day sci-fi movies where you're throwing too much out there and just trying to do too much,
yeah.
trying to please everybody, and it's coming together terribly. But this movie, it's kind of like the first Avengers movie. Nobody gives that movie the fair criticism it deserves because it was so awesome to see them all on screen together, and it was such a great, moment for like nerd as it is,
Yeah.
nerd that nobody really critiques it like it should be critiqued. There's flaws in that movie too.
Oh yeah.
But we look back at it with like these rose tinted glasses, and we're so fond of it that we don't nobody wants to say out loud that they hate it or that they even disagree with it or dislike it. I don't think I've heard too many people say they hate it, but nobody ever says anything that's that I would view as legitimate criticism of the movie.
Well, in the opposite effect, that you get that with the prequels, or yeah, the prequels as well. Like, um, there are some good things in the prequels
But nobody, yeah,
that get
exactly. It's the reverse
overshadowed
effect.
by
Yeah,
all the badness. So there are some things there that need credit that don't ever get credit.
I mean, I don't think they were. I don't think they were completely terrible. I mean, they were not. They missed the mark, is what I think. They were.
There was
It's not like I have a high bar for what I wanted to follow,
yeah.
Star Wars, but it felt differently. Something about it, the tone or the
It was made for a much younger audience. It was made for preteens, um, more than it was made for teens or tweeners. It was even made for even earlier than preteens. It was made for the actual kids who would buy the toys, not thinking that the adults would buy the toys and keep them in the box and probably be the higher demographic who would buy the toys. Because in reality, if you're a Star Wars geek and your kids want toys from the new Star Wars movie, you're probably going to buy two of everything, because you're going to keep one in the box in storage, and then you're going to let the kids play with the other one.
Mhm.
So they could have made a really good movie, and they could have made out like gangbusters. But I was just watching um, The Phantom Menace the other day, and I started to realize how bad the special effects are in that movie. That everything is done on a green screen. That you get that halo around the characters,
Yeah.
and that they had to go in and put that halo around the computer generated characters to make it all look even. So even the computer generated characters look like they've been shot on a green screen.
You know what? I know I didn't like that when the movies first came out. I noticed that when the movies first did that, everything behind them looked fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not gonna lie to you, it turned me off to the point that I probably haven't seen the last two of the prequels more than once each.
Yeah.
I've
Well,
seen I've seen I've seen the first one a couple times,
uh-huh.
and you know what? That first one's kind of watchable, but the second two, just because of how heavily they use that, I can't watch it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because the first one they do a lot of stuff on Tatooine, and they
Yeah,
actually went on location for that.
yeah.
But like when they're on Coruscant or they're on Naboo or they're on that other planet with the cloners, that's all. Yeah, that's all computer generated backgrounds.
And that really kind of like uh, ruined how that movie eventually kind of settled in my mind. But
It,
there again, you're right. There are good things in there, and um, I don't know that it is kind of a spiral effect that they start off by not liking the movie,
mhm,
and so they start picking things from the movie that aren't really as bad, but they make bigger deals out of them.
mhm,
The same way that they over exaggerate who shot first.
mhm.
Like I don't get it. Is Jar Jar Binks really that bad a character?
Um,
I think it's a racist character. I think it's,
uh,
but that's not the criticism I hear from everybody else. Everybody else just said the character was stupid.
well, a lot of the characters are racist. The Trade Commission was very much Asian.
Yeah,
The Quado was his name. The guy who owned Anakin Skywalker, he was very much like Greek or Italian or Middle
yeah,
Eastern or something. I
yeah,
mean, they use these kind of accents, and Jar Jar was very much a throwback to like old Amos and Andy kind of stuff. The way African Americans were kind of portrayed back then.
yeah, yeah.
Almost to slavery and stuff, but more so.
Sambo. There were the word is Sambo, I believe.
Sambo, you're exactly right. I forgot about that actually. But the worst part about Jar Jar, not so much his racist overtones, because a lot of them had racist overtones, and that's why people don't really talk about it. But Jar Jar was annoying. His speech pattern was very much like Roger Rabbit, and he steps in poop. He does a poop gag. And nowhere in Star Wars up until that point did poop ever factor into this. There was never a poop gag before. There were other gags and there's other Lucas humor, but this one was really the lowest of pandering to the lowest common denominator.
Well, see, that's the thing. I don't. That's a like that's one of those things I think is minor that gets blown up
It,
bigger than it is. Because you know where I've seen that joke before? I've seen it in the Ninja Turtles.
yeah, but Ninja Turtles aren't Star Wars. Ninja Turtles didn't have three movies that are considered by a lot of people the most awesome thing that was ever created.
Well, that's exactly what I was saying. It's people have unreal expectations going in. They decide that they don't like the movie, and then they start to pick the little things in there and just exaggerate how bad they actually are.
Yeah, but like I said, there are some good things about it. Some of the special effects, especially the space battle scenes, especially at the beginning of Sith, are really really good. And as for as much criticism as Hayden Christensen gets with his acting abilities, he is actually a decent actor. And the only place in the Star Wars trilogy, in the two Star Wars movies that he was in, where you see his ability to really act and really emote, is basically the only scene that he doesn't have a lot of dialogue in.
Yeah.
He, when Padme tells Anakin Skywalker that she's pregnant, he goes through a gambit of emotions ranging from being very happy and excited to scared to death to nervous to wondering what the Jedi Council will be to going back to being happy. He does this in the span of about 3 seconds, and you read it all on his face. And it is actually a beautiful and touching moment. And when the music starts to swell up a little bit, you feel his anxiety and his enthusiasm over what she's telling him. And it's kind of ironic that the one part where he doesn't really talk is his best moment in the two movies. That it's Lucas who is somehow giving him bad direction to go on, because everybody in the movie is really downplayed and is really subtle and is really kind of, they look like they don't know what's going on, or they look like they have no real emotions. And whereas Han Solo and Princess Leia were very full of life, and they had a thing for each other, but they disguised it by being angry at each other. And I just realized right now that the only reason why Ron Weasley and Hermione got together was because Han Solo and Princess Leia got together. Because the hero of the story, Luke Skywalker and or Harry Potter, doesn't walk away with a woman. And this is the first time I think I've ever really seen that in a movie, where the secondary character, the supporting character, gets the female lead.
See, I've always thought that Luke started out as the main character, but from second movie, episode 4 or 5 and 6 on, it's Han Solo's who everybody paid the ticket to see.
It's an ensemble cast, and the plot could not advance without each other, and that's why they do two in that parallel kind of story.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he definitely did, and he's the most he's the most intriguing character. And I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day, that when you write, you have a tendency of making your main character, your good guy, really, really good, kind of like Superman. You know, he has very little flaws. He knows the difference between right and wrong, and he's always willing to do what's right. And a lot of people don't like that because there's very little conflict, there's very little drama. People, especially writers, will start to really love their secondary characters because you don't care as much about them, so you give them flaws, you give them problems, you give them hang-ups. So you end up making a more interesting character because, you know, he's a smuggler, you know, he's kind of a ladies' man, you know, he's really, really attractive, but he knows it. You know, and you know he's got the hots for this woman, and you know she has the hots for him too, but she's stubborn and she's independent, and you just want these two people to just kind of like fuck it out and get it over with. But, you know, they go through this whole guise of being mad at each other when you know deep down, and it's summed up when right before he gets frozen in carbonite. I love you, I know. And it's better than anything he could have written and anything he probably did write, because that was Harrison Ford's idea on set. Why don't I just say I know and get it over with? And it's a testament to the character, and it's finally, you know, acknowledging what the audience already knew, that yeah, we know we're in love. We've just had everything in our way. And it's those kind of things when you write it like that, when you write those secondary characters that people really fall in love with, which is kind of why I really liked this last Superman movie, Man of Steel, because and it was the beginning more than the end, but I love the idea of Superman having this huge ass flaw that he doesn't know who he is, that, you know, he grows up human for the most part, then starts to realize that he's not, and has this huge identity crisis and has to go out and walk the earth like Cain in order to figure out what he's supposed to do with his life. And it ends up hitting him over the head that he has to be a good guy and he has to be a hero because he has these powers, because he cares about humanity, because he, you know, he is willing to help and do what's right. But he had to come to that realization on his own. He had to lose everything to find out what's important in his life. And that is the more interesting story than just some guy saying, you know, with great power comes great responsibility, accepting that, getting a costume, and becoming a good guy.
See, I'm glad you bring up Superman because I actually just watched one of the animated films earlier this week, like yesterday, I believe. I watched Superman versus the Elite.
Okay.
I don't know if have you seen that one?
No, I have not.
Basically, it takes superheroes and the whole concept of Superman and whether he's outdated or not, and really kind of explores that. Like, there's a group of new superheroes out, and they're violent. They're kind of like the Punisher with superpowers, like godlike abilities. and people respond to that. They like that. They love the fact that they're willing to go out there and do what they feel is necessary to rid the world of real evil.
Mm-hmm.
Like they kill terrorists on a whim publicly, and they're loved for it. And so it kind of throws Superman into this conundrum where he feels like because I have this code, because I have these morals that I will not betray, because I have my code of honor.
Mm-hmm.
Am I outdated, that the world really needs Superman anymore? And I think the more compelling story is the fact that he does have all of that in today, not just in today's world, but the fact that he has that in any generation or anything, and he really makes the effort to actually fulfill that and live that kind of truth to himself. I think that's a compelling story.
See,
That he has this code of honor and that he sticks to it. That's why samurai movies are great.
well, when you put it like that, yes, and if he's throwing more moral conundrums like that, where he has to police the people who are also being good, you know, then yes, then that is an interesting story. That's an interesting twist on the character. But there's a lot of things that and they sum it up in cop movies, especially like the movie we saw today, which we probably will never actually get around to talking to, but that's okay because it's a good conversation.
Yeah.
In Lethal Weapon, the, they throw around the words good guys and bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And as a writer and as a person who wants to have compelling characters, I never see anybody as 100% good or 100% evil. There has to be a balance in every character, otherwise you have very generic characters, one-dimensional characters. And to have them throw around words like good guys and bad guys and have it be black and white like that, it can be kind of boring because you know it's going to happen. But when you see the police officer sitting on his couch crying with a gun in his mouth, too afraid to pull the trigger but too afraid to go on with his life, that's an interesting character, because how is that going to affect his job? And we see how crazy he is out on the job, and we see that the only thing he has going for him is the job, and we see how this new partner of his, who he doesn't want, who his new partner doesn't want him, how they form an attachment together, and Murtaugh fills that gap in Riggs that Riggs didn't realize what he needed to fill it with.
Giggity.
Exactly, yes. But that's where the compelling story of this movie comes from, and that's why this movie is almost the quintessential buddy cop film, because it explores something new. It not only is it kind of groundbreaking in the buddy cop genre, it kind of defines it and makes it and starts it, but it not only does that, but it takes those regular cop characters who are usually really, really good, and it makes them a little flawed and makes them a little more interesting. I mean, Riggs wasn't a dirty cop, but he wasn't the best cop either. He was crazy, and he did stuff that would get a real flesh and blood, three-dimensional in the real world cop in a lot of trouble and probably kicked off the force. He definitely would have gotten that Section 8 or that psych evaluation that everybody in the movie says he needs. So he would have, especially after he jumped off the building with that guy, he definitely would have been hauled into the office and been taken off active duty and been forced to have a psych evaluation and probably been suspended without pay, which is a big slap in the face to a cop.
Well, what I was getting at with the Superman thing is, even within the comic books, people think he's lame because he's straight laced and he's by the book and he's a Boy Scout. I find that somehow more compelling in that it's a lot like the wrestler. The wrestler, he's an outcast in that movie. People look at him and think he's a joke. And I've heard what's his name? I've heard Tom Hanks, my favorite actor and one of the greatest living actors.
Mm-hmm.
They asked him about what he thinks about film, and he made it a point to say this after he won his first Oscar for portraying a gay character. And he said this: the best films are about loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's the compelling story behind Superman. That he has this high pedestal that he's placed himself on and refuses to be budged off of.
Mm-hmm.
He's on that white horse and he's sticking to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like separating him like that makes him a more compelling character. It's a sadder story when you really think about it, because in the moments in between, like the victories, he's basically by himself, and that's always been his story, I guess,
Yeah.
because he's the last son of Krypton.
Yeah.
But Superman is a series of highs and lows, I guess.
It is.
Until he finds Lois Lane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've been at work. Something happened that made me, and I've only been doing this job for like 2 weeks, but kind of made me not care about the job. And it's the theory that shit rolls downhill. That if you have a job and nobody cares about it, no matter how much enthusiasm you have for the job, that's going to start to burn away, because if nobody else cares, why should you care? So you're absolutely right. The fact that Superman in today's day and age still cares is a compelling thing, because with the likes of Batman, with the likes of the Martian Manhunter and the Green Lantern, and these other guys who are a little darker, a little grittier, why aren't they wearing him down? How come he's not seeing, well, other heroes can get away with this? Why can't I?
Yeah.
So there is something to be said about him after all this time, being like that. And the thing is, though, not only does he have to remain that way, but he has to talk about it too. He has to I think at some point he has to ask other characters for permission to stay that way. And I think the biggest one would be Batman, because Batman is almost the exact polar opposite of the hero scale as Superman is. And how interesting of a conversation would that be if Clark Kent danced around the subject of, is Superman too good for his own good, to Bruce Wayne, and have Bruce Wayne say, look, you are who you are, stay true to that. Because that is essentially what Batman is. Batman's never going to tell somebody you have to be dark or you have to punish people. He's going to do whatever works for you.
You keep throwing out these things that touch on large that I have to talk about too, because these interesting subjects. Because I just watched the animated Dark Knight Returns, both parts. I don't know if you've seen that one.
I don't think I have yet.
I highly recommend these. They're not tailored for children, definitely, and they're actually pretty good. I think you'd enjoy them. But have you read the original Dark Knight Returns, or do you know anything about it?
The Frank Miller one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually used to have that in a hardbound edition. I just recently sold it before I moved. But yeah,
that version of Batman, I think, is the perfect version of Batman. That he should be portrayed as that version for the old crotchety, cranky Batman, or just portray Batman no matter how old he is, acting like old crotchety Batman.
Yeah.
Because he actually doesn't give a fuck about anything else unless it means getting the job done.
Yeah.
He could care less about public opinion. He could care less about how he's perceived by his peers. He just does whatever he can to win.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what this new movie is going to be about. I know the Batman character and the fight between Batman and Superman is inspired by The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller.
Yeah.
And seeing Ben Affleck's character with the gray in his hair, I think that's the route they're going with it. So you might get your wish into seeing that old crotchety pulled out of retirement,
Well, he doesn't necessarily have to be old. He just has to retain that level. That Batman, whereas all the other ones had maybe a little bit of nuance to them, that one just says it's right there on his face. It's not. It really is a war on crime into him, and his goal is to beat crime into submission.
True. Yeah.
There aren't the Nolan undertones there, the political undertones that Nolan put into his features. It's just him straight out going out there and punching evil in the face.
Right. Well, one of my favorite things was Justice League Unlimited, I think it was. They got, in their first or second season, they got caught in this whole time travel thing.
Yeah.
And they end up meeting old Bruce Wayne, who is who is training the new guy for Batman Beyond. And then what we see is old Bruce Wayne as Bruce Wayne and young Bruce Wayne as Batman
Yeah.
playing good cop, bad cop with with somebody that they're interrogating. And it's Batman who's playing the good cop and old Bruce Wayne who's playing the bad cop. And I think it's the Green Lantern, John Stewart, who leans over to Wonder Woman and he's like, I never thought I'd see the day that Batman plays the good cop. And and Batman's doing the typical, good cop stuff. He's like, I don't know how long I can, keep him from kicking your ass. And it's an old guy with a cane who's kind of hunched over. And he is more terrifying then than he is as Batman in a younger form. So, yeah, I mean, I see exactly what you're
I
saying.
happen to think that for whatever reason, the action heroes and superheroes are always cooler when they're like old. Because my favorite two Rockies and Rambos are always the first and the last of the series. That last Rambo is a thing of beauty. I gotta tell you. Have you seen the last Rambo?
I don't think I have.
It's the one where he's in Burma and he shoots
Oh
up.
no, yeah, I have seen that where he gets on that anti-aircraft gun and starts shooting people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is very close to being my favorite one. It's right up there with First Blood.
Yeah.
Something about the older heroes coming back and just being old is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Well,
that was kind of the appeal of Dirty Harry from the very start because you knew he was kind of older even from the beginning.
yeah. Well, there's that, or there's the Watchmen, which kind of delves into that. The heroes who've gone into hiding, who are a little older, who come out of retirement to face the world, even though the world hates them
Yeah,
because they need them. That's the beautiful part of that story, and thankfully when Hollywood did that, they kept the essence of that in the story.
you know they're I just read this the other day. They're thinking of doing that over again as a TV show on HBO.
That might be cool.
Yeah, yeah, there's potential there. And what else?
Did you know? How did it go? Um, the way that came about, the Watchmen. Ron Moore was working for DC at the time, and DC bought out another
Charlton Comics,
Charlton
and
Comics.
they had the Blue Beetle, Question, Captain Atom. There's a couple more. The Peacemaker.
Yeah,
These are all the characters that
that they acquired from that other comic company.
and Moore really wanted them.
Moore wrote this story about them and presented it to DC, and DC
Yeah,
looked at it and they're like, "This is a great story, but we're not going to kill off the characters we just bought."
yeah. It was in hindsight, it was a good idea. Those characters have actually endured quite well.
Yeah, but the nice thing is though that he made a better story creating his own characters to do, and they could have done that with the other characters and did it like an annual where it's not in the same continuum
Yeah,
as the main storyline, but he could have done that with those characters anyway. And in reality, he could have made it where Batman, instead of the Night Owl, and Superman instead of Doctor Manhattan, and made the story like that, and it would have been very compelling. But I think using his own brand of characters made it a little bit more realistic because it's not those guys that you see in everyday comics that are one way. It's these guys who you fully believe are dirty and gritty and on the edge and psychotic.
yeah. By the way, for Alan Moore, uh, as I've grown older, I've kind of become disillusioned with a lot of that stuff. Does it seem to you that most of his stuff is a little darker than real?
It is, but he's kind of that kind of guy. I mean,
Yeah,
he did Swamp Thing and he did something else too. He's the other guy that Hollywood goes to after
Frank
Frank
Miller.
Miller.
Yeah,
Which is sad that it's only those two names that they know because there's like lots of other guys out there. But it's like he got very disillusioned with the whole Hollywood process after Swamp Thing was done because Swamp Thing was really, really crappy.
Oh yeah, he's terrible about working with the studios and stuff. He absolutely hates them.
He hates them. He never watches anything that they create because they're never going to be as good as the stuff he writes, which is a little egotistical, but I can understand where he's coming from. He will
Well,
just.
he's just mad because he never got the characters back. He created what a lot of people,
Mhm.
not me, but a lot of people say is the greatest comic book ever. Sold tons of it, and he owns absolutely 0% of it. And he said that as much. He said, "Why can't I put the comedian or Night Owl or uh, uh, Ozymandias on a McDonald's cup and get a profit out of that?" He's come out and actually just said that I want those characters and they took them from me. I made those characters, even though he got inspired by they're they're imitations of the Charleston characters.
Yeah,
So you
but
can't really say he made them, but he's mad that he came up with that story and all of that, and he owns nothing of it.
well, ironically, to the other side of that coin,
Yeah.
um, what George Lucas wanted to do was make, I think it was Buck Rogers. No, it was Flash Gordon. He wanted to make Flash Gordon, and he tried for a very long time in the early 70s to get the rights to make a Flash Gordon movie.
Mm.
And he really loved Flash Gordon. He loved the old serial Flash Gordon. That's exactly what he wanted to make, and he could never get it. So he basically one day threw up his hands and said, "Fuck you! I'm going to go make my own sci-fi epic." And he made Star Wars. So Star Wars is greatly um, influenced by the old serials, specifically Flash Gordon. So if it wasn't for Flash Gordon, we wouldn't have Star Wars. And he gets all sorts of money because those characters are on everything from McDonald's cups to lunchboxes to toys to posters to boxes. So, you know, it's in the comic book world, it's the company that owns the characters. So when you create something brand new, you don't retain those. You're just a writer. You're a staff writer, and it's
Yeah.
the production company. It's kind of like a sitcom, except the creator of the sitcom A is the producer of that sitcom throughout its entire run, and B, I think it's them along with the production company own those characters. So anytime you want to do anything more with those characters, you have to go through that production company first. Kind of like the new Full House. There's the guy probably, you know, if you're a guy and you're like, hey, I want to do like a Full House thing, or I want to do a reboot to like Charlie's Angels, which I would love to do. I have to find, I think it was not Tori Spelling, Tori Spelling's father. I forget whoever Spelling. I think it was Spelling who did the original Charlie's Angels, and
Aaron
then
Spelling.
Aaron Spelling. Thank you. I wanted to say Ian, and I knew that wasn't right. And then I think it was like NBC or CBS who actually did the show. So those are the two people I would have to talk to, which actually would be Tori Spelling because she probably owns all her father's rights.
Yeah.
But there's those two people you would have to talk to go do a Charlie's Angels reboot. You know, or if Tori Spelling wanted to do a Charlie's Angels reboot, she'd have to go and talk to NBC about it to make sure that they're on board or to give them first crack at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, I've grown as I've grown older. I look for more groundedness and realism in things, and while that it may have for a long time it seemed like that was the real way the world would react to having superheroes in the world.
Hmm.
As I've grown older, no, that's not how it would happen. That's why I kind of appreciate the Ultimates. The Ultimates is pretty dark in its own right. It's the comic book that inspired the movie versions of the Avengers.
Okay.
Um, but at least they tried to incorporate a lot of politics. I appreciate that in comic books.
Well, superheroes create a lot of collateral damage, and I seriously doubt the government would join forces with superheroes. I think it would be more of a trying to imprison them or to. I think it's more like what was it, The Incredibles, actually, where the government put them into hiding.
Well, if people like that had those real abilities, they probably wouldn't be superheroes. Or maybe I don't know. But the government would actually kind of instead of just putting them away or lock them up in a box, I think they would actually utilize them. And that's in the first one, in the first Avengers, the government puts them together.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to be a government team, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's how the real world would work out. They would actually try to utilize those kinds of abilities and those kinds of people.
Yeah, but let's go back to Superman, who's always going to do what's right, no matter, you know, what the perception of what right and wrong is. Imagine if the government came up to Superman and said, "Hey, look, somebody blew up our two towers. Why don't you go kick the ass of, all the Arabs in the Middle East?" What would Superman do?
And that is another part of why I think he's a compelling character.
See, now that would be an interesting story because you can't just blame a nationality or a religion for what happened. There's a specific guy who spearheads the whole thing who gave the order. That's the guy you have to find. You can't just have Superman go in and lay waste to everything, and I doubt he would do it. So that would kind of make Superman a communist. It would make, Superman that Snowden guy. Uh, and and make him kind of on a watch
Yeah, go ahead.
list or a shit list.
Hello?
Yeah?
Hello?
Yeah?
Hello?
Hello? Are you
Still
there?
there?
I'm still here. Are you there? You can't hear me, can you? Hello? How did that happen? All right. Well, let me try this. We'll turn it off.
My interwebs went out.
Yeah, you were asking if you could hear me, and I could hear you, but you couldn't hear me apparently.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fixed.
Okay. So the last thing I said was that if the government tasked Superman with going out to hunt Middle Easterns, that he'd probably say no and then be looked at like a Snowden kind of person, be put on a government shit list.
Yeah. And that, again, that's something else that makes him that much more compelling to me. Because The Dark Knight, remember The Dark Knight Rises? He was. Uh, Give me 1 second. I have a long distance call.
Okay, yeah.
Go ahead. Ali? Ali? Hello? Where was I? Oh, yeah. Remember in The Dark Knight Rises or The Dark Knight Returns, you know, Superman basically, because Frank Miller, I guess, hates Superman. Kind of like just works for the government,
Yeah.
and like there seems to be that traditional sort of belief that he's sort of this conservative, old-fashioned, aw shucks kind of guy.
Yeah.
I honestly think he's a socialist. I think if he was around, he'd vote for Bernie Sanders.
I can kind of see that. He's very much of a
He loves the downtrodden.
let's all do it together kind of a thing.
Yeah. Again, you should really watch those animated things. I'm telling you, there's some good stuff there.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello?
Hey, I'm back.
Yeah.
Chupacabra.
There
Yeah,
you go.
apparently I have no idea what the fuck happened. Jamal got out like after his whole like porno.
Yeah.
Like I had two words coming out of Jamal and then it started getting all fuzzy and like breaking up and then my internet just died.
He's using the brown out words again. I think he's just being racist towards you,
So
Alex.
I said it could have been a brownout. And then
I don't think that's a thing. I think you're just saying that to be racist towards Mario.
No. Brownouts are actually a thing in California.
Blackouts.
No, brownout.
Blackouts.
No. A blackout means the entire area has no power because there's a power surge. A brownout, on the other hand, means that the area that I live in, which sucks, actually gets systematically turned off. So the other neighborhood, which that's where the hospital is, doesn't have a power surge, and they can keep getting power at a normal level.
Mario. Don't side with them. The struggle, bro. The
I'm
struggle.
not struggle. Are you kidding me?
Anyway, you haven't
childhood.
you haven't missed much. We've been talking about comic books and comic book movies and Star Wars.
see, Jamal tries to start shit between Mario and I because I say stuff like brownout, which he doesn't believe is a real thing. Now,
I just don't think it's a real thing. I'm not trying to start anything.
Jamal, only if there was a Google's worth of information at your fingertips would you be able to figure out what a brownout is.
I'm not gonna do that with all this porn on my computer.
See, the thing is, though, he doesn't realize that if I really wanted to make fun of you, I would just call it a fat out.
Yeah, exactly. Come on, Jamal.
It's great that you two are, that close. That I can say stuff like that. But I'm gonna. We were talking something earlier that I wanted to mention to you. It was about Star Wars in general, and you're a big Star Wars guy.
Man.
If you look at it objectively, like if it wasn't as successful as it was, and we're not looking back at it with like rose-tinted glasses, I think Star Wars is it's a bad B movie that just caught fire.
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
Number 4, Brave New Hope it wasn't anything sensational, but it was something different at the time.
And that's kind of the consensus.
And if you think about it, that's where all great movies come from. Yeah. Let's see, Tarantino up until
he's always been pretty good.
But up until like Kill Bill, I want to say all of his stuff was pretty. It was all indie.
Yeah, I'll point. I'll give you a point.
And then you come out with something like Kill Bill, and don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking Tarantino. I love his work. His stuff is so much fun to watch. But then you watch Kill Bill, and you're like, oh wow, this is getting some notoriety. This is getting really big. And then Inglourious Basterds comes out, and you're like, holy shit, this is a bigger spectacle. And he'd been working on Inglourious Basterds for 10 years. And then he's coming out with the Hateful Eight right now, which some of the screenshots and stuff like that looks pretty freaking good.
I'm worried that's the letdown of next year. Honestly, I think we're at that point with Tarantino where we put it our expectations are unreal at this point.
Well, I mean, it's from the Weinstein Company. The trailer's out already. I mean, it looks pretty good. It looks decent.
It looks.
Oh, by the way, I sent something.
Tarantino.
I sent something on.
He actually just sent me the link for the definition of brownout. So it's an actual thing according to the racist internet. That's right. I'm Donald Trumping this. I'm not backing down. I'm Donald Trumping this. I'm not backing down one bit.
Oh, sorry. Are you going to make fun of a handicapped?
I'm so worried for this country.
Fuck, what was it? He made fun of a handicapped news reporter.
I know, right?
3 weeks ago. I couldn't believe it. Oh, at first, I thought people were just fucking around. It's like, oh, haha, Donald Trump's making fun of somebody. And then I started looking around. I'm like, holy shit, he actually real, isn't it? Yeah, like he actually made fun of a fucking handicapped reporter. Like, what a dick.
I am so worried for this country. He's number 1 in the polls.
Yeah, polls mean dick.
He's getting. There's nobody else grabbing headlines like him right now, unfortunately.
Yeah, headlines.
Yeah, but those aren't good headlines.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Headline, any
No,
publicity.
when it comes to politics, bad press is bad press.
Yeah, so
Well,
you guys don't remember Walter Mondale, but he didn't get elected because he wore a silly hat.
Yeah.
was that guy from the 08 election that screamed at a rally or something?
Oh, that was
That wasn't McCain.
Yeah, that was McCain.
No, it wasn't. It was it was a Democrat, and he screamed, and it sounded like a girl screaming. So, yeah.
I thought that was McCain.
I thought that was too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, McCain was on the Republican side, and he made it through. The other guy did it once, like very early on in his campaign, and he was just done from there.
It was McCain, dude.
No, I'm telling you, it wasn't McCain.
Wasn't it? Oh, it's Howard Dean.
There you go.
Yeah, it was Howard Dean. That's what it was. I just found it. All I had to type in was McCain scream, and then it just said, "Did you mean Howard Dean scream?"
Okay. There you
By
go.
the way, I sent that one to you guys too because it's actually kind of funny.
I actually typed in politician who screamed, and it came up with the Fox News alert.
Oh, did you? Yeah. Iowa.
Again, I'm worried for this country. But back to the topic at hand.
But fucking Howard Dean got dick all for that presidential year.
Well, no,
election year.
He was a serious contender until this came out.
Yeah,
but
because
it's like
everybody ripped him apart. But when
for a scream.
Yeah,
really,
but
for a scream.
You get someone like fucking Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong, I love watching his shit when he gets on TV. For the same reason that I loved watching George Bush Jr. when he came on TV, because you're like, oh, he's an idiot. He's gonna say something really stupid and funny, and then we invaded Iraq under false pretenses.
And then he stupids his way in. He sound bites his way into the White House, and that's no good, no bueno.
Well, a lot of people they spoke for him.
Well, the thing was that when he was left to his own means to talk, it would be so obvious how big of a dumbass he was. Mm-hmm. Like when he tried to say the phrase "fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me."
And it was "fool me twice, you can't shame a shamer."
No, it was the phrase was he said, "Fool me once, shame on you," and then he panicked because he didn't know what the rest of it was, and he's like, "Fool me twice, I won't be fooled again."
Yeah, something like that.
Was that way? Yeah.
That's exactly what he said because
I thought he said you can't shame a shamer.
He might have said that in a different speech, but in the fool me one, he quotes the Who. I won't be fooled again.
Oh God.
And I heard that. And I'm like, he did not just say that. I was floored. I was just like, oh my God.
Okay, hold up. I just found it. I'm gonna listen to it really quick.
And he is just amazingly stupid. And if he wasn't prepped for...
Okay, so it was fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
But that's not what he said.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No. I just read it.
Right.
He just said breast and brightest. Oh, did you find it?
No, that's a different one. It's not actually him, though. But it illustrates just how dumb he is.
Do you remember when that whole thing went down at the prison in Iraq, Abu Dhabi? Or Abu Ghraib?
I got it.
No, yeah, Abu Ghraib, not Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi is a place. It's a rich Middle Eastern place.
Yeah, but it went down at Abu Ghraib, and he did a speech, an address to America. And he couldn't pronounce the word, and every time he had to say it, he stumbled over it. You could physically see him try to read it off the teleprompter, and he would say it a different way every time. You would think somebody would come up to the president, especially George Bush, and be like, "Look, this is how the word is said."
You guys hear that?
Barely.
Hang on.
Yeah, loudify that.
Well, no, I'll just send you the link.
No, play it so the whole world can hear it on our thing.
Well, no.
Chinchilla?
Let's forget tax relief, underestimate.
You guys getting
Just
that?
making sure you're paying attention. You were.
You should go
I
to
know that human being and fish can coexist peacefully. The responses have got to end in order for us to get the framework, the groundwork, not framework, the groundwork to discuss a framework for peace, to lay the...
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you hear all of that?
Lord.
Yeah, we were able to hear it.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what happened to my computer. All right.
But yeah, he was not an eloquent man, and I don't understand how he got elected. His dad, I totally get, because his dad is somewhat savvy, and being vice president for 8 years, he picked up some shit.
Have you heard his brother?
Jeb.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Okay, first off, his name is Jeb. You can't take anything serious from a guy named Jeb.
Well, no. Listen to him talk. He actually sounds knowledgeable, and that's the tragedy of this election cycle. All the Republicans have idiots at the very forefront, and there's a couple, maybe a few, like legitimate politicians who know what they're doing, and they're like way down in the polls.
Yeah, that's because you can't have a beer with them.
Apparently.
So, see, the thing about Jeb is that there is this huge scandal, or there was, and I'm sure people will bring it up again if they're smart if he runs for presidency, about
He is currently.
Yeah.
about George W. Bush's election the first time around, and the whole controversy about how Florida, which was run by his brother at the time, had to keep recounting the votes. And finally, Al Gore was all like, you know what, fuck, I'll just concede Florida. This is taking too long. And because of that, he lost the election. And it's because of George Bush's brother, who was, supposedly fucking around and stuffing the ballot box and whatnot. So there could have been some cheating going on the Bush side of the family.
Shocking.
The sad thing is the Bushes are now what the Kennedys should have been, except all the Kennedys got shot.
Yep.
And
Imagine if the Kennedys had lived.
Yeah, and the Bushes died. Oh my God, what a perfect world that would have been.
We'd have hoverboards.
Well, there was this documentary. I forget what it was. I'm gonna have to see if I can find it. Big time conspiracy theory documentary, where they were pointing out that that George Bush's dad, George W. Bush's granddad, was a banker in America who almost exclusively banked with the Nazis.
Ooh.
So he was a Nazi sympathizer. And then he had political connections and got his son into politics. And then George Bush got the grandfather got the father, George Bush, into the CIA, which is a huge thing right now because they're trying to have concrete evidence that George Bush was in the CIA, because this would have been about, what was it, 62 when Kennedy got assassinated?
Yeah.
And he's kind of black ops kind of a thing, where, he didn't like go out and assassinate people, but they think he might have had a hand in the Kennedy assassination. That George Bush Sr. might have had a hand in the Kennedy assassination.
Really?
Yes, that he would have been in the CIA if he was officially in the CIA, which why wouldn't he be? At the time that that Kennedy would have been assassinated, and he would have been the kind of guy who was like, okay, he's a big wig, his father's a big wig, we need this guy on our team, kind of a thing. He would have been the golden child of the fucking CIA. So if the CIA had something to do with Kennedy's assassination, it could have been, George Bush involved in it somehow.
Yeah. Conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I mean, they're fun because, they're crazy, but
Yeah.
every once in a while somebody kind of makes sense. And it's like, yeah, I could see that happening.
Do you personally believe that the Twin Towers was an inside job?
We should stop talking about this right now because this is going to be a large conversation.
Okay, agreed. I side with Mario on that. I'm sorry I asked it.
I will tell you this. Oh, there it is, George Bush Kennedy assassination. I will tell you this, that our government knew that Pearl Harbor was going to be attacked by the Japanese, and we did nothing to deter it, to prevent it, or to prepare for it, because America thought that it was all talk, that the Japanese would never dare to attack us on our own soil, no matter how close to Japan we were. And we did things out of arrogance that prevented us from having a good response time into preventing it or minimizing the damage. So to say 9/11 was an inside job, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but our government's intelligence agency, we spy on our friends. So we probably know a lot of shit that's going to happen to us well before it happens. And either out of arrogance or out of some sort of weird plan to invade the Middle East for oil, they probably knew that the Twin Towers were going to get hit and did nothing about it. Now, if you want to go real freaky, there was a rap group who came out with an album. I think they were supposed to drop on 9/11. It was either a couple days before or a couple days after, where they're standing in front of the Twin Towers as the Twin Towers are exploding. And that got pulled from the shelves immediately. They redid the cover art for it and then put it back out on the shelves. But one could say that this was something that should not have been surprising to anybody. That in folklore, in comic books, in rap album covers, in cartoons, in any kind of literature, everybody says, if I'm going to, hurt America, I'm going to fly some of our own planes into the Twin Towers because that will be seen on the evening news. So it should not have been a surprise that it happened, whether we had a hand in it or not. Before the fact, I am pretty sure we had a hand in it after the fact, because George Bush Jr. did get Osama bin Laden's people out of America before the CIA could talk to them. So there was somewhat of a cover-up going on, and why would you cover something up if you didn't have a hand in it? Other than the fact that, they were actually kind of friends, and we actually put, what's-his-face, Osama bin Laden in the power and gave him the weapons. Because at the time, he was a freedom fighter, so it was a cool thing to do.
We're on a list.
So, you draw your own conclusions on that. Those are facts. The CIA did train Osama bin Laden and give him weapons to fight the Kurds or whatever incursion, whatever government that was there. So we already have a friendly rapport with him. Maybe we, made a deal with him. Maybe we didn't. Maybe.
I'd still blame Ollie North for all of that happening too.
Ollie North was involved in that scandal.
Yep.
He was the scapegoat of that whole thing. But you got to admit, for a scapegoat, he was the man.
Oh, he took it on the chin as hard as he possibly could, but
he took it all right.
Happened.
Yeah, he not only did he take it, but he kind of bounced back after that, because he became a correspondent for like CNN or Fox News or something.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's a very knowledgeable guy.
Yeah, so everybody knew everything that happened to Ollie North was bullshit, but we let it happen because it's easy to blame somebody than it is to actually take responsibility for it.
Exactly.
To say sorry, my bad, won't happen again. And if you've ever had a job, you've had to have that conversation with your boss. And believe me, there's a lot of respect when you say, sorry, my bad, won't happen again. Glad we had this talk. Than if you try to blame it on somebody else or say it wasn't your fault.
I do that to try to get fired.
You do that?
I did that to try to get fired. It was like, yeah, I fucked up. Even if it wasn't. Even if it wasn't. I was like, yeah, it was my fault. They're like, oh, okay, well, don't do it again. Fuck.
if you admit to it and you say you're sorry that it won't happen again, they think, oh, you admit fault, you take responsibility for your actions. That's the kind of guy we want on our team. If you start ratting people out, even if they didn't have anything to do with it, then they're going to be all like, this guy's a weasel. We don't want him on our team. So if you want to get fired, you have to remember the phrase, hey, it was like that when I got here.
Actually, I like screaming the phrase, I'm an adult, and walk away. Oh, no, it wasn't that. It was, I need a supervisor.
You're not my
sorry.
supervisor.
No, you're not my supervisor. That's what it was.
That's from Archie.
Yeah, I actually screamed that a couple times when I was working at my fruit juice blender place, and I would scream that. I would scream, "You're not my supervisor," to my supervisor, and then just walk into the freezer. Honestly, that wasn't the reason I got fired.
Why'd you get fired?
I showed up late like 9 times in a row.
Hey.
It was a shitty job. I got paid minimum wage, and some weeks, if I was lucky, I got 12 hours. So I just stopped caring.
Yeah, that happens a lot of jobs. I used to work at Chili's, and I got fired 3 times before I quit.
So after the first firing, you just went, nah, and came back?
Let me see if I can remember how this went. I think the first time I got fired, it was their mistake. And they told me I could come back and everything was okay. The second time I got fired, I went on a 6-week vacation to tour the country. And the general manager ended up leaving to go to a different store. And one of the other managers took over as general manager, and she was all like, you didn't give us proper notice. And I'm like, bullshit, I gave you 2 months notice. She's like, you only told us about this last week. I'm like, no, I reminded you about this last week. And she's like, well, I hope there's a job here when you get back. And I'm like, oh, there will be. And I leave, and I come back, and I announce that, I'm back and I'm ready to be put on the schedule. And she's like, okay, well, I'll keep that in mind. And everybody's laughing about this. And I'm like, what's so funny? And they're like, oh, you're fired. They're like, didn't Chris tell you? And I'm like, no, she didn't say anything about it. She just said that she'd keep me in mind for the schedule. She'll put me back on it. She's like, she ain't putting you on it. Like, you've been fired, man. She was really insulted or really upset that you took off for 6 weeks. And I'm like, fuck her. I already told her. Plans were already set in motion. I wasn't changing my plans to work. They're like, yeah, I don't blame you, man, but you're fired. So I go home. Literally that same day, I get a call from my manager, Chris. And she's like, hey, one of our guys stopped showing up to work, so we need you to come in and fill in his shift. And I'm like, starting when? She's like, starting today. And I'm like, oh, I'm busy today. Does he work tomorrow? Yeah, okay, I'll come in tomorrow. And then I forget what the third time I got fired for, and then I was just all like, no. And they're all like, what do you mean no? And I'm like, you guys have to come up with a better excuse to fire me than that. And then I just ended up stop coming into work, which I consider to be a quitting. I don't care what anybody says. If you stop showing up to work, you have quit.
Yeah. That's what I did when I worked at oh god, what was it? Sears Portrait Center.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I left one day. I was like, at that point in time, I forgot where I was going to get hired. I think it was at Jamba Juice, funny enough. I don't remember. But I left, and then they were like, oh, are you going to come back? Like, okay, so to work at any photo center, you have to bring in 10 people to do portraits for.
So you have to sell a portrait package to 10 of your friends.
Yes.
Because that'll make you fucking popular with your friends.
Right. You don't have to sell anything, but they do get a free print out of it. I'm like, okay, so I brought in my roommate.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, okay, you need to bring in an animal, and you need to bring in a baby, like under 3 years old, and then something else. And I'm like, I've only lived here for 3 years. I don't know anybody. She's like, well, you need to do that in order to keep getting hours. So after my friend got her portraits taken,
I would have said at that point, all right, give me 10 minutes. I'm going to go see what's in the mall.
funny enough, right the week before I started working there, we were able to do that. We were able to go outside, go to like the was it the food court,
Mm-hmm.
and talk to people. But security had talked to us a million times already and saying we can't do that. We just can't do that. So they did it again the week before I actually started working there. They actually got the cops involved and said, okay, guys, you have to stop doing this. We're going to start calling this harassment. And if you do it again, we're going to arrest you. And so my boss was like, okay, I guess we could stop now. I was like, whatever, she's a crazy woman. So, so anyway, so I had to bring in, it was a total of 10 hours that we had to, or 10 hours essentially means 10 people that you bring in.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to bring, so I brought in my roommate, my friend, and then I was gonna bring in. Thank God I knew a couple of people when I was working at when I was working at Brooks, who had kids, and a couple of other people, and then I was trying to find a pet. And it was just this bloody mess. So I brought in my friend. She
See,
helped me do the portraits. Got
I,
that through.
I would have found somebody with a horse to bring in or a cow, something that just, craps indiscriminately.
Yeah, honestly, I know a lady in Santa Barbara she raises exotic animals.
Mm.
So she has like crocodiles and fucking caimans and like all these random ass animals.
Right.
And part of me was just like, should I call in a favor to do this? It's like, nah, it's not worth it. So I ended up, my friend came in, did the photos, and then she got her portrait and everything like the week later, and I just stopped going. Like I would wake up and my boss would email me because that's how I got my my schedule. She would email them to me,
Mm-hmm.
and so for 3 weeks I would get the schedule, and every single day she would call me, "Hey, are you gonna show up today?" Nah. Well, and then she would tell me, "Oh, okay, why don't you call us when you're ready to bring in the people that you need to?" I was like, "All right, no big deal." Never called, didn't do anything. In that entire time, I was actually getting money from the company because they still owed me 2 weeks. I mean, it was $200 that I was getting for
Yeah,
those
but
2 weeks.
still.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, it'll help pay rent. It's not gonna pay rent, but it'll help pay. But in that meantime, I was doing side job. I was working freelance and little things like that. So I made rent at the end of the month. But I was just, And then a month goes by, and then I get a letter, and it's like, hey, if you want to keep working here, you have to respond to us, blah blah blah. Call us, do everything. I was like, oh, and then I looked at it, and it was post dated. So she sent it like, by the time I got it, it was 2 days before, or like a day. Sorry, I had to call in that day that I received the letter
Uh-huh.
in order to keep the job. But I just looked at it and I just went, nah.
So were you like a photographer? Were you the photographer assistant or what?
No, I was the photographer assistant. And then eventually when I got the 10 people, then I could start getting clients of my own.
Mm-hmm.
where I'd be able to, do all the pictures and, do the and sell them and do all that stuff.
So what does a photographer assistant do at the Sears Portrait Studio?
Okay, so the camera is hooked up it's hardlined to the computer.
Mm-hmm.
And then so what the camera assistant does is they watch the computer and make sure that they got the shot. And if they need to get like a prop or something, we get it.
Mm.
That's it.
That is one of the most mindless things I think I've ever heard.
It was $11 an hour.
That's not bad.
Honestly, I would have been happy staying the camera assistant because I'm not a photographer. I'm aware of that.
You did a good job with Robin.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, I had, what? How many hours did I have to do that?
We did it in a day.
Well, we started around like 3, and then we finished around
like 5 or something.
5:30.
Dark.
Yeah. I mean, but I had time to do it.
Yeah.
I could take a picture, see what went wrong, see what went right, and then adjust.
Yeah.
With this one, okay, so at Sears, you have 40 minutes. That means from the time you get in
Mm-hmm.
to the time that they leave from buying whatever they wanted to buy, you had 40 minutes to do everything.
Yeah. But, on the other side is that, too. If you're the assistant, you should be watching what the photographer does and picking up his pointers.
You would think, but...
I mean, a good assistant, anyway, would do that.
Well, yeah. But you know me, unless I'm doing it, it doesn't go into my brain.
Right.
I do that task that I'm supposed to.
Right.
But if I'm doing a photographer task, then I'll start learning it. So I just, for most of the time that I was working there, I just turned my brain off.
It's probably kept you sane.
It was a bullshit job.
Yeah.
So anywho. Jamal, you still there?
Yeah, I'm born.
All right.
And hey, Jobs, you want to tell us how you got fired from?
I've never been fired from a job, so I don't know.
Really?
Yep.
You don't know what you're missing out, man. You don't know what you're missing.
There is something about going out in a blaze of glory or doing stuff, and I would do this thing where I would do something at work that I knew is wrong, not necessarily something that is, horrible or detrimental to anybody, just something I shouldn't be doing. And I would do it until I had a manager come up and tell me that I need to stop doing that or I get fired.
Yeah.
And then I would figure out something else to do. So technically I would stop the thing that would get me fired and then start doing something else that had the potential of getting me fired.
That's exactly what I would do as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's fun to screw with management. And I worked, when I was working for the cable internet service, it was a very corporate mentality. And I wanted to have the day off one day. And I didn't want to just call in and say, I want the day off. So I purchased a shirt that I thought would get me sent home. And it was a button-up shirt that had, I think it had Betty Page on it. And it was a very scantily clad Betty Page. She wasn't naked. You didn't see nipple or vajayjay or anything that was naughty, but it wasn't an appropriate shirt for work.
Please don't say the phrase naughty. That just sounds weird coming from you.
So I have basically this full body S&M photograph of Betty Page on the back of this rather nice button-up shirt, and also on the front of it too. So I'm walking around work, and part of my job at the time was to walk around and talk to the agents to see if there was any outages or any problems of the country that they were having issues with that we needed to repair or whatever. So I would walk around and I'd talk to everybody, and one of the managers comes up to me and he's like, "What the hell are you wearing?" I'm like, "Oh, this is my new shirt. Do you like it?" And he kind of does a face palm, and he's just like, yes, it is a very nice shirt, but I don't think you should wear that shirt to work. I'm like, what? This is in the dress code. It's button up. It's short sleeve. I mean, it's not tucked in, but you never said I had to have it tucked in. And he's like, no, it's just the subject matter is, and he's trying to explain it to me, and he's trying not to hurt my feelings about this.
Right.
So he keeps starting his sentence. He's like, no, the subject matter, the word appropriate, and he keeps doing that. And he's like, look, if anybody else sees you in this shirt, they'll probably send you home. But I'm giving you a shot. Just stay out of everybody's radar today.
Damn it.
And he walks away. And I'm like, you son of a bitch. Why do I got to be so liked at work? Like, oh. So, I took the opposite of his advice, and I walked around more, and the one manager, the female manager, who would have sent me home because she was a little bit of a bitch, saw the shirt, and she just kind of looked at me, and she's like, huh. And she walks away, and I'm like, what the fuck?
I like how when you try to do something to get you sent home, or just try to do something in general, that you want the repercussions to happen, it doesn't happen.
No.
But when you don't try to do it, then that's when you get yelled at.
Yeah. Well, contrary to popular belief, I actually have a pretty decent work ethic. Even if I don't like the job, I work pretty hard at it. So I have had a reputation of being a pretty decent employee, despite my shenanigans.
No, I know you do.
Yeah.
Trust me, I worked with you for the past couple of years. Well, not these couple of years, but I've worked with you for a couple of years. You're a really good employee.
Yeah. So like, at this job, there was like a manager who, wanted to have the sex with me, and I never, did anything with her because she was in management, and I didn't want her job to be, to suffer. And, for the most part, I'd toe the line, and, I was very cordial to most of the supervisors and everything. So, you get that reputation of being a nice guy around work, and then all of a sudden you can't get fired or sent home or, whatever.
See, and that's the difference between you and me, is that I'll actually do the absolute bare minimum to keep my job.
See,
and if at any point in time they're like, oh, we need you to go and go home, no big deal, because there are a million other people who can do the job better than I can.
Oh,
better work ethic.
A lot of times I would be the first to volunteer to go home. And people would be all like, we need people to volunteer to go home. I'll do that. You sure? Yep. Anything for the company, sir. And of course, everybody around me would laugh, but I would say it with a straight face.
Of course. Because otherwise, they're going to keep you there.
Yeah.
Grown-ass man.
Yeah, well, only physically.
Yeah, I know. Trust me, I've worked with you for 2 years. Excuse me. Oh my God.
So anybody actually get around to see Lethal Weapon?
I thought it was Die Hard.
And so at least we still have a topic for next week.
I'm kidding. Yeah, I thought.
I was unable to watch it with my current schedule.
Oh shit.
So I've seen it before. I just wasn't able to. I was actually watching clips of it on YouTube, but I wasn't able to actually sit down and watch it again.
Mm-hmm.
But
you want to hold off on it then?
We can do that. This is a pretty good conversation. It took up probably about 2.5 hours, so I have plenty to work with here.
Cool.
All right. We can save it for next week.
All right.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you.
So we're gonna talk about 2 movies next week?
No, we'll just talk about Lethal Weapon next week.
Oh, okay.
Unless you really want to do another movie.
No, I was just curious.
I'm thinking with the holidays coming up that we should probably lighten our workload a little bit. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah, like we do a lot.
All right.
By the way, I'm not going to be coming to Arizona next week.
Oh.
Yeah, I was stupid and I ran a red light. And it's like $600.
Jesus.
I have
Yeah.
a ticket that I have to take care of. I have no idea how much it is or when it was due. I think it was sometime last week.
Jesus, Alex.
I know.
Ugh.
I'll figure
So
it out.
I will be needing your guys' address so I can send you a couple things.
Okay.
I will text
P.O.
you.
box. I don't care.
Yeah. I will text you stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, guys.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jamal, for sticking around and having a wonderful conversation with me about everything but the topic at hand. And
Porn.
thank you, Mario, for checking in periodically today.
I attempted. I honestly don't know what happened to my internet.
Okay, so thank you, Mario, for periodically checking in with us, and then thank you, Jamal, for being here for the entire time. And it was a wonderful conversation. I wish you could have been a part of it, Mario.
Yeah, I know. I apologize.
So next week we'll try to.
It's good that you were here at all. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah,
Well, I honestly do apologize.
it is definitely.
No, you came back for like a good hour combined. 20 the first hour and then 40 this last one, so we're good.
I'm glad we got you to keep track of our time cards.
Well, no, because we have that thing on the. Your Skype doesn't have like a clock on it.
It does, but I don't really pay attention to it.
Yeah, John, he really doesn't pay attention to much.
No.
Yeah, I'm
true.
trying to get that.
All right. So Lisa, next week.
Cool.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye. Take care, guys.
Love
Bye.
you all.
Join the makers each week as they discuss film, TV, and pop culture. To learn more about them, go to mof.ninja. This is Sean Connery saying goodbye.